This is the character that you no longer see brought up in anything pertaining to the game, story, nor gameplay. It makes a lot of sense given where we currently are in the game. But as for the gameplay of this character, it's actually very disappointing, and in this video, I'll explain why. I just want to let you all know that I will be live streaming the Madoka Magica Magia Xedra live stream that is going to be happening on YouTube. It will be on Twitch. twitch.tv/Choshio, link will be in the description. If you don't have the time to make it, of course, I will have a video of the live stream in some way, shape, or form on the channel. So look forward to that. Hopefully we'll make videos on the game alongside our Star Rail content. And again, I do stream consistently, regularly on Twitch. So yeah, again, if you just want to hang out, the link for that will be in the description. Anyways, let's get back to the video. If we go back to a time where in Star Rail everything and everyone was viable, the balance was a lot more one-sided. Some would argue, but at the very least, every character could actually work. Pitch Dark Hook the Great was no exception. Hook had one thing truly going for her, the amazing early game kit she had with the competitive multipliers for the content at the time. In the beta, and even in the launch of the game, there was only one in-game that was to cater to every character only to backfire and be best in slot for one class of characters. Heck, even throughout the story modes and campaign, most scenarios were blast as well. This only made those destruction characters feel a lot more viable than other classes early on. With the many fire enemies present in the early throughout late game, and the constant blast scenarios, Hook was to be one of the better leading characters in the launch of Star Rail. That's by receiving substantial nerfs from the launch patch. Unlike Arlen, she was not completely gutted, which allowed the character to remain relevant. Appearing on the launch banner as a featured 4-star, any player was able to try out Hook for the first time, which meant that we were able to get a glimpse of one of our strongest fire characters at the time. This mattered a lot more because of the fact that Himiko, being a standard 5-star, made her less obtainable to the vast majority of players without accounting for the rerollers or those that won the 1 in 7 chance to obtain her. Later on, this will become 1 in 14th with the actual standard banner odds. So not many people having access to Himiko, most scenarios being blast-centric in pretty much all content, and lastly not receiving as harsh nerfs like Arlen did would contribute to the early success of the little mole rat. Around this time would also be the misconceptions of Hook being a better character than Himiko, with the current content offered being one-sided. As I iterate in any video with AoE characters, Pure Fiction should have launched early on, because this would have helped with a lot of misconceptions of certain characters. I mean, heck, we had no idea around this time period that we would even have content like this for a class of characters that were not destruction. We're not even going to make it that far in the video of Hook's history, so it really doesn't matter to begin with, but first impressions are very important, and that's what I was alluding to in my long-winded explanation. If you were a player around this time, your resources were very scarce, and ideally there was only a few characters you'd want to have built. Asta was the one that came to mind, with her being given to the player for free. The thing is with Asta is that she's very versatile with the speed and attack percentage given to everyone on the field. However, for characters like Hook, she was especially best in slot with the unconditional up to 42% fire damage boost she gave to fire-based allies. This character was to massively boost the damage of Hook. Unlike destruction characters currently, Hook had no way of amplifying her own raw stats and damage percentage, so Asta was all the more valued. Kafka's release did signal something about characters with dot application in their kit. Considering most early fire characters had some form of damage over time, they were to see usage alongside Kafka. Sure, the bird of Himiko and Hook, even Asta, wasn't as strong as a dedicated dot character. It was a little extra damage on top of their base skill and ultimate multipliers. This dot also helped Kafka maximize her Good Night and Sleep While Light Cone passive to give herself the highest damage output possible. This team was also especially good with both lightning and fire weak enemies. While only being a few in the current contents offered, there was still some, and with Asta in the party being a general buffer for Kafka, Hook wasn't to see any damage loss as she still had her best ally in the party. So for a few patches, Hook felt like the real deal. For a 4-star damage dealer, she was very nice. She also had an extremely budget team and worked with a very quirky character like Kafka gameplay wise. What was the problem with Hook then? Well, the release of better damage dealing options, we had already seen the potential of destruction characters with the release of Blade in patch 1.2. And we were also to see another with the release of Denheng and Bibitu Lunai in patch 1.3 first half. Having two stronger destruction characters that weren't reactive to play like Clara was a big deal. For certain, these two were extremely easy to pilot, and had a massive numbers advantage over the pre-existing options. It also didn't help that they were new and flashier, which helped with the appeal over Hook. If you're using Hook or any character for 3 patches straight, eventually something new along the way coming would catch your eye. This was also a time in which we see less enemies in the in-game contents with fire weakness. That made Hook's damage fall off drastically, and this was to promote the current rate of characters, of course. I would also lastly like to mention that Hook wasn't an easy character to build like these newer destruction characters. They had more access to crit value with relic sets and traces. If we take light cones into consideration, that would give 3 sources of crit value over Hook and make her feel like an outdated character altogether. Jing Lu released later in patch 1.4, and well, you already know what happened to the pre-existing destruction characters that weren't Blade and Den Heng and Baby Lunai. It wasn't even like you could transfer your relics from Hook to Jing Lu, because one was ice while the other was fire. So at this point, the usage of Hook was pretty much near zero, until those using the character in some form of challenge, where that was free to play or 4-star only. She went from being one of the better characters to one of the worst. Definitely did a lot better than Arlen did, and that's really all that mattered. For a 4-star damage dealer lasting 3 patches, that's awesome in my honest opinion. I do want to lastly mention that the release of Pure Fiction in 1.6 was to finally showcase the strong suit of erudition in AoE characters like Blade. So Himiko, the worst enemy of Hook, was to see a huge uptick in usage following this game mode. It's also important to note that around this time, more players would have access to their free 5-star standard character from the banner selector, which meant many more players had access to Himiko with this brand new content. So it wasn't that Himiko was a bad character or worse than Hook. It's just that the current content didn't cater to her, and with the release of new relics, planar sets, and this game mode, the gap between the little mole and Himiko became much more wider. Present day Star Rail, nothing has changed for Hook. Sometimes you'd see the spike in usage following new content, for example the release of Pure Fiction and Herda. There was even a rise in usage following the Harmony MC for XY break teams. However, for the most part, Hook has just remained where she has been ever since the release of the destruction characters starting from 1.2. Firefly did help a character like Himiko stay more viable with Pure Fiction thanks to her fire weakness implanting on the enemies, and being able to break the toughness bars of the first wave when the battle starts, which allowed Himiko to have her follow-up attack off rip. However, Firefly's release was only good for Himiko, and Hook didn't have any redeeming factors or intricacies in her kit that would allow her to thrive in multiple scenarios. The fire implanting was good for sure, but with the amount of players with Himiko at the time, there is no point in using Hook anyways. It seems like Hook now joins Natasha and Hanya in the Relics of the Past Hall of Fame. Thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day.